Okay, let's move forward to the next presentation. Thanks so much, Ashley. And let's move forward to the next sessions, next presentations. So we will have Dr. Junseok Park. Dr. Junseok Park is the Chief of Drug Discovery Center at Daewoong Pharmaceutical. He received his doctoral degree in medicine chemistry at Seoul National University, the College of Pharmacy. And in 2019, he got the Innovative Pharmaceutical Company Award from Korea Health Industry Development Institute. And he's also served as the head of drug discovery team at Daewoong Pharmaceutical. Dr. Junseok Park will have his presentation on the needs for novel therapeutic of atopic dermatitis and diabetes for companion animals. Let's welcome Dr. Junseok Park.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Can you show this slide?
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Junseok Park, head of this Drug Discovery Center of Daewoong Pharmaceutical in Korea. And thanks to Professor Soo-chan Choi for inviting at this great forum. Today, I'm going to talk about the needs of novel therapeutics of companion animals. Before this talk, there is one problem. Yeah, one of my coworkers said it will be difficult for those who don't have pets to develop appropriate drugs for pet and humans. It means that proper understanding disease and pain of animals is needed to develop drugs what pet owners really want. One of my concerns is that I don't have a pet yet. Let me tell you that I'll seriously think about it in the future. I'll start my presentation. Yeah, I would like to give a few opinions on the necessity of developing animal medicines in various diseases, especially atopic dermatitis and diabetes. It's very lucky. Don't overlap to Ashley's talk. Yeah, first, what is the unmet needs in animal medicine? Look at this slide showing kind of companion animal. Perhaps most Korean may be a little surprised that horses are pets. Yes, in Europe and the Americas, horses are recognized as companion animal, and the need for drug development exists. There are approximately 200 million pets, mostly dogs and cats, during 2017 to 2018 in America. Now, obviously, the number is expected to have increased compared to then. The purpose of this session is due to the rapidly increasing number of pets during recent years. According to Zoetis, which is the #1 animal drug development company, the increase in pet care costs result from 4 factors: an increasing number of pets, an increasing time with pets, an increasing voluntary spending on pet health, and finally, market growth due to the development of number of innovative drugs. On the market side, the pet drug market has also been recognized due to its growth since 2020, to the extent that the new word, pet economy, has been created. As you can see in this slide, by 2028, the average market growth rate has reached 7.4% per year, far above the human pharmaceutical market. Korea's pet industry market is also expected to expand to 6 trillion won, that is $5 billion by 2027. For reference, although not included in this slide, Korea's share of the global human medicine market is just only at around 1.5%. But the size of the pet market accounts for a larger proportion. This prediction is also very closely related to the recent low birth rate in Korea. Personally, I'm very sad. Now let's talk about animal drug development companies. Have you heard of the companies that are presented on this slide? Zoetis, Elanco, Burbank. Maybe Boehringer Ingelheim, MSD, you can see and you can heard. Actually, I didn't fully know until recently. Intrigued me, 4 of the top 5 global companies originated from pharmaceutical companies that develop human medicines. This result may be natural in a way. In other words, information obtained through animal testing, which is essential in human drug development process, can be used to develop animal medicine. And what's surprising is that these companies have significant sales in 2020. The sales of #1 company Zoetis is comparable to that of the human pharmaceutical company Vertex. Vertex is very private and company, which ranks 20th among global pharmaceutical company. In addition, most of the companion animal medicines developed by these companies are for the treatment of allergy, immunity, pain, cancer, and infectious disease. Veterinary drugs are often used off-label, so it is difficult to find accurate sales data because it is hard to collect statistics. So the list of top 10 drugs by sales in Russia as of the last year is as follows. Most of them are anti-infectious drugs, but atopic dermatitis and heart disease drugs stand out. As the proportion of companion animal treatment increased at home, it can be expected that the proportion of chronic disease treatment will be gradually increased. Credit Suisse investment banks surveyed 78 pet doctors on the most unmet needs of this disease and found that pain management was the top priority, and that viral disease, atopic dermatitis, diabetes, and cancer were high needs. Although it is a minority opinion, we've actually found a similarity to human disease. In other words, chronic pain is a treatment field that has not yet been solved in humans. Atopic dermatitis, diabetes, and cancer, for which good drugs are being developed recently, are still high demand. Then,
excuse me to interrupt. In
okay.
This table, what is the response? The percentage. What is it?
Oh yes, it's the score is by the 78 the pet doctors is what is the main unmet disease for you? Yes, sir. Then what about the trend of animal drug development in general? Pet owners are familiar with the human medicines and are demanding innovative drugs. In addition, pet medicines are also changing from conventional pesticide and infectious disease to the chronic disease treatment due to the increase in animals' lifespan. Animal drugs are starting to get interested in approaches like monoclonal antibodies, stem cells, and gene therapy, and Ashley's cancer vaccine, and so on, as in human drugs. Furthermore, Zoetis announced that it would be partnered with Regeneron Pharma to add monoclonal antibodies to their growing portfolio and use Regeneron's genomic technology to explore treatment for allergies and immune-related disease, along with pain and cancer. Now, we would like to learn about atopic dermatitis, which has high unmet needs among various animal diseases, and which I'm also interested in and give my opinions on the treatment development strategy. Atopic dermatitis is also a representative disease that lowers the quality of life in humans. It also affects the quality of life in dogs. Most of the pet owners say that they suffer together with their dogs who are suffering from severe scratching with atopic dermatitis. The cause of atopic dermatitis is not clear, but it is immune-related skin disease caused by house dust mites or food, which act as external antigens. The main symptoms are itching, scratching, and inflammatory reactions. Itching appears as major symptoms, and secondary damage circulation occurs due to inflammatory reactions caused by self-injury, caused by scratching. However, existing drugs target only one of the itching, scratching, and inflammatory reactions, so the effect of drug has limitation. Briefly looking at the size of canine atopic dermatitis market, data from Zoetis, which sells two exclusive animal drugs, represented at the next slide, recorded sales of about $1.2 billion, and annual growth rate is 30% on average for 4 years. It's great. Because in case of human medicine, drugs with annual sales of more than $1 billion are called blockbuster drugs. However, the data of veterinary drugs are more than $100 million, so the sales of Zoetis 2 drugs are considered. According to the American Veterinary Dermatology Association, about 10 to 15% of all dogs suffer from the disease. Then, now let's talk about atopic dermatitis drugs which are currently used. The first is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, SSRI drugs. They can control scratching, act on the central nervous system, and inhibit the self-injury, a major cause of disease severity, but it still lacks clinical efficacy. And then antihistamines, steroid, and immunosuppressant may be used as major drugs to control inflammatory reactions. However, antihistamines are also ineffective. Steroid and immunosuppressant are quick and reliable drugs, but they have serious side effects such as Cushing syndrome, infection, and skin atrophy. Therefore, long-term treatment is not recommended as it is for human use. Zoetis, a blockbuster drug, Cytopoint and Apoquel are developed recently and gaining popularity among pet owners. Improve itching, act on interleukin 31, the main proteins associated with itching. Cytopoint, which is interleukin 31 neutralizing antibody, is injected once a month or 2. Apoquel, which inhibits JAK1 kinase, followed by interleukin 31 suppression, administered orally once or twice a day. I've heard that many Korean dog owners are so satisfied with these 2 drugs that they ask their doctor to prescribe this drug, despite the high price, and even if the doctor prescribes other drugs. However, these drugs are excellent in improving symptoms of itching. Even long-term administration is insufficient to treat the cause of the disease. In other words, these drugs cannot provide skin barrier improvement. Skin barrier improvement is the final destination of atopic dermatitis. So among the 3 problems of atopic dermatitis, how can it be overcome by improving the skin barrier? The only one that has been overcome. Several studies have shown that it is possible to improve the skin barrier when it is accompanied by inhibiting of inflammatory cytokines other than interleukin 31. As such, canine atopic dermatitis treatments are gradually evolving and being developed, but they are still not perfect. So the following drug development strategies are proposed. As the existing treatment are limited to interleukin 31, new treatment needs to suppress more various inflammatory cytokines related to itching, such as immunoglobulin E, interleukin 4, and interleukin 13, thus improving itching and scratching and also securing skin barrier. Finally, I will talk about the development of diabetic drugs. The number of dogs with diabetes is increasing every year. It is reported that the diagnosis rate of diabetes increased up to 32% in dogs and 16% in cats every year. As the number of good drugs increase and the number of animals living only at home increase, the incidence of diabetes and obesity is also increasing. Dogs are usually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, while cats are with type 2 diabetes. 1 in 230 cats and 1 in 300 dogs are confirmed to have diabetes. Therefore, the development of diabetic animal drugs is highly necessary. Currently, for diabetes in dogs and cats, the only treatment option is the injection of insulin. You know, insulin is a great drug to treat diabetes, but it is not difficult for pet owner. For proper blood sugar control, the dose of insulin should be administered very carefully according to body weight. That is, there are risks such as hypoglycemia when administered in overdose and failure of blood sugar control when administered in small amounts. Oral administration with excellent blood sugar control is urgent need since insulin injection is less convenient than oral drugs. Human diabetic drugs are also can provide great benefits for companion animals. So first of all, I will talk about human diabetic drug development history. With the first use of insulin in the early 20th century, various medication mechanisms of diabetic drugs have been developed. The oral DP4 inhibitor and subcutaneously injective GLP-1 agonist gained popularity in the 21st century. Most recently, oral SGLT2 inhibitor has become one of the best drugs in the current market. Here, diabetic drugs which have distinct mode of actions were compared in 3 aspects: level of blood glucose level, hypoglycemia risk, and body weight change. You can clearly see the GLP-1 agonist and SGLT2 inhibitors are superior to other drugs. Among them, I expect SGLT2 inhibitor, an oral drug that is convenient for pet owners, to be the next generation diabetic treatment for pets. Although various treatment options exist, double and triple combination drugs with metformin are also increasingly prescribed for more effective treatment of diabetes in humans. SGLT2 inhibitor, unlike existing treatment, have a mechanism of action that directly excretes glucose from the kidney into urine. Unlike other drugs, it can provide not only body weight loss, but also kidney protection and reduced cardiovascular risk. In addition, in terms of safety, there is no risk of hypoglycemia. So it is expected to be a new diabetic treatment option that overcomes the limitations of existing insulin treatment. Based on these advantages, until recently, an SGLT2 inhibitor called belagoloflozin has been developed as a treatment for diabetes and obesity in cats and ponies, but no clear results have been obtained. In addition, there are a lot of results that a number of SGLT2 inhibitors are effective in type 1 diabetes. And the first SGLT1 and 2 dual inhibitor, sotagliflozin, has proven its effectiveness in type 1 diabetes, and therefore approved in Europe. However, it should be noted that SGLT2 or 1 and 2 dual inhibitors can cause diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA, especially type 1 diabetic patients. Therefore, the development of SGLT inhibitor with proven efficacy and safety is expected to provide a new diabetic treatment option, such as reducing the use of insulin to decrease the medication stress of pet owners. This slide is my final message. As the importance of pet is increasing day by day, pet owners will find better, safer, and easier drugs like human therapeutics. In a today's talk, I presented the status and drug development strategy of two diseases that are highly recognized recently in the development of human medicines, atopic dermatitis and diabetes. Perhaps the field will develop quite quickly, and we expect competition to intensify. For reference, the Korean government also showed high interest in the development of innovative medicine for pets in recent days. Now, I wrap up my presentation here with the hope that this talk is helpful to many of you. Thank you.